For about a week now, we've been playing Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn, and after completing every side quest, collecting every piece of gear, and fulfilling the promise to kill all gods, we are genuinely surprised at how much we like this game. My name is Codiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and after 30 hours with the game, we're sharing our full thoughts on A44's new title, Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn. As always, we're going to try and remain as spoiler-free as possible throughout the review, but as we discuss some systems and rough edges, we might venture into that territory. If anything is about to hit spoiler level, we'll be sure to warn you first. I also want to be sure we put this whole Sweet Baby Inc. thing to bed right off the bat. For those that don't know, this is an outside company with a checkered reputation and gets hired to help shape the narrative of different games. To be clear, nothing about Flintlock's story felt shoehorned in, and nothing felt altered or pushed in any way towards a political agenda. The character dialogue was solid and well voice acted, and any flaws we point out in our review are solely the fault of the game's design choices and implementation. Alright, awesome. With that out of the way, let's jump right into it. Flintlock is a surprisingly fun and shockingly well thought out Souls-lite that manages to bring a more cinematic, action-oriented approach to the gameplay. You play as Nor, a sapper and member of the Coalition, fighting against the undead now unleashed into the world after a magical barrier, keeping them contained, is destroyed. Your main mission is to kill the gods that are unleashed and now claim ownership of the places you once called home. Luckily, you won't do that alone. Alongside you is Enki, a god in his own right, who will act as your companion and ally in combat as you fight to slowly rid the world of the god's grip. I want to start by talking about the world itself, because from a visual standpoint, it's gorgeous. From a gameplay perspective, it embraces fluid traversal and vertical movement at almost every opportunity. The world is divided up into several self-contained but nevertheless expansive themed regions. Think of each one as being its own small linear story that ties into the overall narrative, with pockets of other things to discover along the way, such as additional side quests. At the start, you'll be in the mountainous, frigid lands of Three Peaks, home to a faction of knights responsible for conquering most of the known world. In the second zone, you'll find yourself in Wanderer's Rest, an arid desert region with winding canyons, sandstone structures, and pockets of lush vegetation. Through the use of black powder, Nor's traversal skills are augmented, allowing you to double jump and air dash as you attempt varying degrees of traversal puzzles. For the most part, movement feels good, but one of our ever-present complaints throughout the game is that our character, and sometimes even the enemies, just don't have that grounded weightiness to them. Across the board, things feel floaty, and while that was by no means a deal breaker for us, it was noticeable from start to finish. Enki allows you to cross large distances via rift travel, which pulls you across magical anchor points in fixed locations. These allow you to then launch yourself out of them at any angle, and using your momentum and other traversal tools, reach hidden items and ledges otherwise out of reach. These rifts also double as shortcuts, since you'll often find the pedestal that generates them are at the ends of long combat sections. This allows you to easily return to that location should you meet an early death along the way. Simply put, it's a cool way to account for quality of life, while also being a core exploration mechanic. Now here's where I do have a sizable complaint. Exploration in any game should feel rewarding, and while Flintlock does do a good job of drip feeding you things to collect, in the form of wood, iron, and sulfur, special resources you need for upgrading your gear, as well as conscript trinkets, items you can use and consume for reputation, this game's version of Souls, this accounts for 95% of the collectibles within the world. There are various hidden chests that reward you with either a new weapon, armor piece, cursed stone, or bomb type, but by the end of the game there were so few of these that it genuinely felt like the game could have supported 2 to 3 times more of these chest-based rewards to make exploration feel rewarding. This would cause an entirely different issue, however. As it currently stands, progression can feel a bit grindy. Reputation, again, this is the game's version of Souls, is earned by defeating enemies, discovering locations, and consuming those trinkets I mentioned earlier. Your action and combat all add to a modifier, and so long as you don't get hit, that modifier continues to increase, rewarding you with more reputation as long as you consume the modifier before getting hit. Once you get hit, the modifier disappears and you'll have to start all over. It's an interesting way to deal with something so common as experience gain and does reward higher skilled players with faster progression due to the increased reputation. This is good because everything in the game, and I do mean everything here, requires reputation. You want to unlock a new skill. That'll be 5 to 25,000 rep. How about that new outfit cosmetic? That's another 5k, a massive waste of reputation if I do say so myself. How about upgrading your weapons, armor, and bombs? Well, in addition to your limited collection of wood, iron, and sulfur, you guessed it, you'll need more reputation. Because of the scarcity of early game resources, this forces you to identify which weapons and gear work best for you and invest in them early. Now, to come full circle, this system discourages experimentation, and that's with the limited number of weapons actually in the game. If more were added, that would be great from a loot diversity standpoint, but the grind to level those all up would be unbearable. I also think this is where we need to briefly touch on Sebo, a minigame within Flintlock that was clearly inspired by other minigames such as Gwent from The Witcher. It's just nowhere near as cool. You'll find NPCs all over who want to engage in this turn-based board game. The goal is to form a triangle with 3 of your pieces during the attack phase, and then prevent your opponent from doing the same during the defense phase. You'll also find special coins with different abilities throughout the world that you can use during Sebo matches at the cost of turns, and sometimes these are necessary to beat tougher opponents. If you successfully attack and defend, you'll earn reputation the first time you beat an NPC, and while this is meant as an optional game mode, it certainly felt like we needed to do all of these simply because of how much reputation you need for the various progression systems. But here's the good news. The progression and combat systems are surprisingly deep and a hell of a lot of fun. Your character, Nor, is equipped with a primary melee weapon as well as a primary ranged weapon. This is usually an axe or a hammer in one hand and a flintlock pistol in the other. You'll also eventually have access to a second melee weapon that you can cycle through during combat, important because of the various buffs the melee weapons provide, as well as the ability to slot secondary ranged weapons. Believe it or not, these aren't just more pistols, but are actually different weapon types like hand mortars or rifles that provide different functionality during the action. The kicker is you can't just pull these out whenever you want. You have limited ammunition, but being able to weave them into the combat was a pleasant surprise. Your primary ranged weapon plays a huge role in supporting the melee combat, which often dominates the ebb and flow of the moment-to-moment gameplay, not only providing huge amounts of damage, but also interrupting unblockable enemy attacks mid-animation. For every 4 melee hits you land on an enemy, it restores a black powder charge, which allows you to fire your pistol again, so it is very much a secondary weapon while also providing immense value. Nor can also equip 3 armor pieces, and you'll find each one belongs to a specific set. Each piece of armor, whether it be your helmet, gauntlet, or pauldrons, has its own unique perk, as well as an armor synergy perk when 3 pieces of the same set are equipped. There's even a skill unlocked much later on that allows you to wear 2 pieces of one set and 1 of another and obtain both armor synergy bonuses. As you upgrade these pieces of armor, some will get more potent effects, while also awarding you flat stat increases to melee, ranged, or magic damage. Then there are your skills, and thank the heavens that this is a developer that truly understands skill unlocks should always augment or enhance the gameplay, rather than just provide flat bonuses. Everything in the skill trees feels impactful and caters to either a ranged, magic, or melee playstyle. If you're fully exploring the world, you'll easily have most of the tree unlocked by the end of the game, but even those individual unlocks throughout progression felt meaningful, and that's not always the case with skill systems. The skills are amplified by the action itself, which is fast-paced and cinematically focused. As you deal damage to enemies or apply cursing effects via Enki, you'll notice a purple meter building up on the enemy itself. When this fills up, they'll go into a short stun state with the next attack triggering a cinematic takedown, killing lesser enemies or removing armor and chunking the health of larger elites and bosses. When the camera was behaving, which wasn't always, these were awesome and added a unique element to the overall gameplay. You'll even be able to augment this effect through various skills, which spreads that curse effect, turning some fights into cinematic blurs, adding to the overall badassery of all of it. Lastly, I do want to talk about the boss fights, and of course, Some slight spoilers here, so if you don't want to know about the boss encounters, look away now. In total, there are 4 main encounters across the entire game, and truth be told, none of these were extremely difficult. Part of that is due to the countering system, which is the main way you engage with all of these bosses. These fights test your ability to parry all of their basic attacks, not get greedy with follow-ups, and task you with properly using your black powder charges to stop their larger, uncounterable attacks. This formula forced each fight to follow a very specific pattern, and while we didn't hate them, they do feel repetitive. The way each attack pattern and counters were implemented in the various fights did feel unique, especially in that first fight. You have to successfully counter 3 consecutive attacks in a row to deal damage to the boss, slowly cracking off his arms. It was neat implementation, but overall, we ended up wanting more variety and less predictability. The saving grace was that the bosses felt like true end-of-region encounters. The story leading up to each new region felt well crafted, and the voice acting with each boss was legitimately great, so we'll call that a win. That leaves us with the only question that really matters. Is Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn worth the $35 price tag? If you like how these gameplay systems sound, are intrigued by the more aggressive counter-focused combat, and want to explore a really well-designed world that is sometimes sparse in its rewards, then yes. Will this game win any sort of awards? Our money is on no, but it was certainly an enjoyable experience that got more fun as the game opened up. So there you have it, our thoughts on Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn after beating the game and exploring everything the Lands of Kion have to offer. As always, if you enjoy these types of reviews, be sure to hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. There's still plenty of time left in 2024 and some big games to cover, so keep it right here and never miss a thing. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.